All right, you've got 7:01 and you're live.
Okay, thank you. Welcome all. It is June 15th, 2021, and the meeting of the City of Oneonta Common Council is hereby called to order. And Carrie, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Herzig,
Here.
Councilmember Murphy,
Here.
Councilmember Davies,
Here.
Councilmember Risberger,
Here.
Councilmember Lapari Shu,
Here.
Councilmember Carson,
Here.
Councilmember Harrington,
Here.
Councilmember Rafter,
Here.
Councilmember Drenick.
Here.
Everybody is here. Okay, we have no public hearing scheduled. Do we have any petitioners, Carrie?
There are no petitioners.
Okay, then we'll move on to board and commission reports. First on the agenda is the Board of Public Service, and that would be Councilmember Drenick. Who has disappeared on us. Mark, are you out there? All right, let's come back to him and we'll jump on to next is Environmental Board, Councilmember Davies.
Thanks, Mayor. So the Environmental Board met last Tuesday, June 8th, and they have divided up into several different committees. So there's community engagement, urban forests, transportation, and public spaces. So community engagement spent quite a bit of time talking about how they're going to work to engage the public post-pandemic. They'd like to figure out how they might be able to use some meeting spaces to engage the public in discussion of some of the different environmental issues that the public is interested in. The Urban Forest Committee was working to discuss plantings and where they'd be putting in some of the different trees that are going into the city this summer as well as next fall or this fall. And also is beginning to work with Greg in terms of exploring a memorial tree program, which apparently we've had some time ago, but has not really been used recently. Transportation is investigating a sustainable purchasing policy and green fleet policy with perhaps an eye towards making some recommendations of this body in the future. And then lastly, public spaces is a little further along with some of what they're doing. They're looking to ask this body at some point in the future to have official city birds or trees or flowers. That would be, they're going to try to get some public engagement in that particular process. And then perhaps also naming some of the different natural features, like some of the streams that don't have official names. So they're exploring those too, and there might be some motions coming forward at some point soon to the Planning Committee. And that concludes my report.
Questions from anyone? Okay, thank you to the Environmental Board. It sounds like we have an energetic, proactive group. I know we have mostly new members, and glad to see that things are taking off. I will tell you that 4 years ago, Dave Hutchinson showed up at my front lawn and on my front door and planted an elm tree on my front lawn. It was about 4 feet high. Today, it is nearly 20 feet high. And my wife named it Elma. And it took some damage in a storm this past winter, but I performed surgery on it by drilling holes and bolting the branches together, and it seems to be doing just fine. So Dave Hutchinson, he can plant a mean tree. Okay, let's go. Now we'll go back to Councilmember Drenick.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. My apologies. I'm in unfamiliar surroundings with unfamiliar equipment, but I think we got it. Board of Public Service met on June the 3rd, old business, 95 Center Street, water sewer bill. We had discussed this, I believe, last month, and it was a water sewer bill fee appeal that was denied. New business, 7 Otsego Street, a water sewer bill fee appeal. This is a building that was purchased that has a really odd contraption that the landlord had never seen anything like, really didn't even know what it was. Turns out it was regulating the water flow. That decision has been delayed 1 month pending the city being able to check this thing out. 15 Washington Street. It's an unsafe building, and the new owner is asking, in fact, that that be declared unsafe because they'd like to tear down the back of the house, and there's a shed that was attached, like to tear all that down. It was in fact declared unsafe, ordered vacated, demolished, and repaired with renovation by the end of the summer. And finally, 77 Maple Street, also declared an unsafe building, also at the owner's request. Again, someone who's just purchased the building, they want to demolish the detached part of the house and remove it for garden and landscaping. They asked that that be demolished in the next 60 days, and that pretty much concluded the meeting.
Any questions for Councilmember Drenick? Great, thank you. Parks and Recreation, Councilmember Lepari Shu. Everybody's running away from their reports today. Okay, let's.
I'm here. Sorry. I had to run a quick errand. So Parks met on Wednesday the 9th, and I was unable to be there, but I did catch up via YouTube, and I've also connected with Parks Director Lansing. So the meeting opened with a long petitioner section. There's sort of a controversial thing going on that I think we reached sort of an agreement on a while back, and this is like way in the works. Through the committee structure, it was agreed that one of the tennis courts over near Wilbur Pool will be converted to a basketball court. That conversion has begun, and the residents of Union Street were not thrilled with that because it would significantly change the dynamic of their neighborhood. And so we heard from some folks prior to the meeting and leading up to the meeting, and then in the meeting, who live on Union Street about that. I think that we have come to the conclusion as a parks group and the guidance of Greg Mattice, our city engineer for now, that we are going to try to make that into like a family recreation area and put things like Foursquare and hopscotch on the it's not pavement, but you know what I mean, on the floor in there, and just not line it for full court basketball. And that way it can still be used by potentially like people who are at the park or at the pool and, you know, they want something to do afterward, but it will discourage people from using it for full court basketball, which was their concern. Similarly, coming up to Common Council at some point, but first going to Planning Committee is something to, so the second portion of that is that there are some trees that are on the city property that need to be removed that will also kind of erode the barrier between their neighborhood and the park. So there was some concern there. So I think we're going to put it forward to Planning Committee to discuss some possible solutions for that, maybe a hedge or a fence or something. Moving on from that, the commission approved some dog training in the parks, which is a class held by a dog trainer. Lou gave her report. We did get a dog park update. So their previous meetings have been mostly organizational. They elected co-chairs. And then I think that we at the council will probably see some rules for the dog park in July. At the next parks meeting, the Community Garden Steering Committee is going to give a report. So I'm looking forward to that. And there was sort of an update on metal detecting. Lou and Greg may have already had this meeting, but they did reach out to someone who's active in the hobby just to learn more about it, to get some background before the committee moves forward on any recommendations for metal detecting in the parks. We discussed fishing in Neowa Park. The committee, this is just sort of a straw poll, supports potentially allowing fishing at the mill race. So more work needs to be done there, but that was discussed. And then also discussed was the need to create a master plan for all the parks, but specifically Wilbur Park does not have any sort of guiding document. So that will be, you know, slow process, but forthcoming. And that was it. Thanks. Sorry I was late for my report.
Questions, anyone? Len?
Katie, is there plans to reinstate the basketball courts in a new location at Wilbur Park?
Okay, so the basketball court that is the topic of discussion was added. So it didn't exist and now there's an extra one. And the reason why it was added is because that tennis court specifically was always pretty underutilized. And so they were trying to brainstorm ways to get people to use it more. So no, it won't be relocated. It'll just be, as far as I know, the hoops are going up. And it's just more recommended for like family play, like horse and things like that. And then, so actually what started the vision, the conversation around the vision for Wilbur Park is that the existing basketball courts on the upper level are pretty sad and could use some repair. And there's sort of no timeline, no anything that we're really like, as far as I know, as far as I gleaned from that conversation, there's no real plan for improving those courts. But yeah, so it's not a court being taken away. It's a court that was added that is going to be kind of repurposed.
Okay, so the rims and the net are going to stay. It's just that they're going to be asking people to not have adults on it. It's just going to be children.
Well, it can be adults, but we're sort of discouraging people from playing like full court 5-on-5, like intense games there at that court specifically. The courts at Neowar are much better suited for that anyway. And the idea would be, I think that the courts in the upper level, which have quite a bit more buffer between them and like neighborhoods, need refurbishing. So that's kind of on the agenda.
Thank you.
Good question. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll just enter a personal opinion, and that is that basketball is a lot more accessible to young people and people of lower income levels than tennis is. And I would hate to see basketball, access to basketball be given a being shortchanged here, because it's one of the most accessible sports to people of any background, any income level, any assets. So.
Question.
John Rafter?
Yeah, Katie, what were the objections by the people neighboring the location of the court?
Yeah, sure. Namely noise. It's just a family neighborhood, and several of the people who chimed in have young children and just sort of objected to moving a noisier sport closer to their neighborhood. Especially coupled with the idea that the tree barrier was going to be thinned.
Okay.
Okay, if there are no further questions, let me get my screen back awoke. Okay. All right, that concludes the board and commission reports. We'll go to committee reports. Start with legislative committee. Councilmember Rafter.
Thank you, Gary. The Legislative Committee met on June 7th, and there was only one topic on the agenda, and that was the MU1 form-based code. There was a lot of enthusiasm and commendation for the code officer in putting that together. The only question that came up was determining what the relationship or the conformance of that code would be to New York State law regarding zoning boards and planning commissions. So, and that was going to be discussed further with David Merzig, and that's where that stood. And we thought that was a good idea, and just to make sure that we're on solid ground with that.
Questions, anyone? Len?
John, is that the last hurdle before this document will be approved by the legislative committee, moved up to full council?
That was the only concern. They were the only questions that came up from the legislative committee. And if it was determined, or we were advised by David that whether it be waiting for the next meeting or doing it in between, we can move forward with it, or we can wait to have one more meeting and then bring it forward to the council.
Okay, thank you, John.
David, have you had a chance to consider that?
Yeah, Steve and I met, either, it must have been yesterday. Seems like a long time ago, but he gave me all the information that had been discussed, and I'm going to pursue it. We haven't made a final determination, but he discussed all the issues that were raised in the legislative committee, and I'll get you something in writing.
Thank you.
Gary, you're muted.
Okay. I'll say it again. Finance and Human Resource Committee, Councilmember Carson.
Thank you for saying that twice, I guess.
I won't tell you what I said the first time.
It's all good things. We also met June 7th, 6 p.m. All committee members were in attendance. The minutes were approved. And I believe we had 9 items on our agenda, which worked out to be in, I believe, all 14 that's on tonight's council agenda. I'd like to welcome Daniel Peterson on accepting the position of a police officer with the City of Oneonta Police Department. And I just wanted to remind the council that we've approved the expenditure through a bond for the $2.2 million reconstruction of West Street. It includes the infrastructure plus the road construction itself. But this is a process that we're going through. We're not necessarily taking the bond out today, as Jimmy described it to us. It will happen in a later date, but we did need council's approval. So that's why it's on tonight's agenda. And I think that was really the highlights of our meeting. Is there any questions over our consent or discussion items?
Len, I'm going to suggest that we have a thing on a motion on the consent agenda regarding the contract with Delaware Engineering. Might be a good idea to provide some background on that before we get
discussion. Yeah, let me scroll down to it.
I don't think it's for discussion. I think it's on the consent. I think it's the last one.
So under consent is 11, which is the police officer. Under discussion, we go to the 2.2.
Number 14. I'm looking at motion number 14.
Right, that's under discussion. But I can talk about it. So what this is in regards to is
okay, I didn't realize under discussion. We could wait then. On my agenda, I don't see. Oh, I see. Finance Human Resource Committee discussion. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't catch that. So yeah, we can wait then. I thought it was on the consent agenda.
Right, we'll wait then.
Great. Okay, any other questions for Councilmember Carson? Okay. Thank you. And now we are ready to move on. I'm going to switch the order here and let Dr. Jorgensen go first. It's the least I owe her after making her wait till midnight at the last meeting. And I think she probably has some good news for us.
Well, thank you, Gary, and thank you for everything. And it is definitely good news, but wait a minute here. I am going to start with a little bit of perspective and reminder that we still are in a global pandemic. In spite of the good news. As of today, there have been over 175 million cases, and there's still, in these bars represent weekly, over 2 million cases, new cases a week, and over 3.8 million deaths, over 70,000 deaths per week in the world. Here we go. So where is this coming from? As we know, good news here in the United States, which remains the country with the most reported or confirmed cases. The numbers are way down. In India too, which is reassuring. But you can see from the South American countries, Brazil and Argentina, and below this is Colombia, they're still experiencing significant number of cases and significant stresses to their healthcare infrastructure. Europe also looking good. And here's just a map of the world. This is from the World Health Organization, and it's about a week old, but it shows you how there are still parts of the world where this pandemic is not in good control. Whereas we in New York State now have a 7-day case average of less than 2 per 100,000. There are countries, as you can see, that are over 300 per 100. Over 300 per 100,000, yes. So, and again, this mostly is in South America. You can also see significant continued cases in South Africa and parts of Asia, and even in parts of Europe and the Middle East. But the good news, as you all know, is here in the United States, we've seen an ongoing steady decline of cases down to 14,000 a day, which is remarkable. Deaths also rapidly declining, although we are reaching that threshold of nearly 600,000 deaths in the United States. You can look to the right and see that 65% of those adults over 18 have now received at least one dose of the vaccine. The threshold that President Biden had been working us all toward was 70% by July 4th. I put this up because I thought this was interesting. This from the Washington Post yesterday is a graphic representation of how and why maybe some of our cases in the United States have declined. I mean, some of it's been the warm weather and all the social distancing, but a great deal of it can be attributed to vaccines. And here on the x-axis, you see those states where there have been a greater percentage of people vaccinated, and on the y-axis are the case rates. And so you see in those states where more vaccinations have been realized, the case rates are fewer. And we in New York fall into that cohort, which is, I think, very reassuring that our vaccinations have worked. I am a little worried because Oregon and Washington seem to be outliers, and that's where my children live. But for the most part, I'll take this graph. New York State, again, wow, we really declined here. While we are over 2 million cases and close to 53,000 total deaths, all indicators, cases, deaths, hospitalizations have significantly declined, so that we have reached that 70% threshold of adults being vaccinated. This again, it just shows New York, where now the positivity rate statewide is at 0.4%, new cases per 100,000, 7-day rolling average is about 2, and here in the Mohawk Valley, we're right around that same number. This was from yesterday, 1 new case reported by Otsego County, only 3 active cases in the county, which is just phenomenal. Be mindful, though, that again, we have some positivity surrounding us. As of today in the Daily Star, Shenango County had 19 active cases, Delaware 17 active cases. There are currently no patients in the hospital at Fox. And again, this is just another representation of Otsego County, specifically showing our significant decline in positivity and cases reported. Looking at vaccination, and this is hard because the way in which it's reported differs. There's no number here for Otsego County 18 and up having received one vaccination, which is again that 70% threshold that we've reached in the state. But fully vaccinated here in Otsego County, adults 18 and over, we're at 53%. That is lower than the state, which is 62%. Again, this is fully vaccinated adults, 62% in the state, 53% in the county. So we have fallen behind a bit. I think that's not an issue of access or availability. It's more an issue of people choosing to be vaccinated. Where we are with the vaccines right now is the SUNY site has rapidly declined in numbers such that they've moved out from the field house into a mobile unit in the parking lot and are mostly doing walk-in Johnson & Johnson vaccines. The folks there told me they're not sure when they may close. As of this afternoon, at least, they knew that they were going to be staffing it at least through the end of the month. Gary, you may know more. The county is actively working at getting vaccines out. They've had pop-up clinics in Skanevis and Lawrence and have one plan for Portlandville, as these are the communities where they have a lower vaccination rate. They've also been going to schools for those younger kids. Okay, moving forward, in terms of wastewater analysis, you can see we were below the level of quantification for a couple of weeks in May. Then we had one small blip up, and now Greg did report today the most recent, which is not on here, from the 14th, shows again below the level of quantification. So that's good. And I think we'll still continue to track this, because were it to trend up at this point, it would be of concern. SUNY is going to take the summer off because of very few students, if any, on campus. So they will not be testing their wastewater through the summer. They're continuing to test a few employees. There have been no new cases reported from SUNY this week, and none from Hartwick. This is just briefly to know that as of May 31st, the World Health Organization has shifted the naming of variants to Greek letters, alpha, beta, gamma, delta, just to get away from associating it with countries. Just to know that the alpha variant, or that being previously known as the UK variant, is now the predominant one in the United States as well as New York State. Just a brief mention of the Delta variant, that which was predominantly in India, is now the dominant variant in the UK. And they have seen a slight increase in cases there, which is why they've delayed their full opening for about a week. Again, these are variants of concern because they've proven to be more transmissible, in some cases more likely to cause severe disease, and that is true of the Delta variant, and maybe less susceptible to our vaccines, although by and large, most vaccines that we have now will cover the variants of concern that have been identified. Testing. I just wanted to say something briefly about testing. This is not Oneonta. This was this weekend in Brooklyn, where I was. I think there may still be a role for testing. Hopefully not in those people that are symptomatic, although that we still need to test for that, because again, there is still some presence in Otsego and surrounding counties, but also for allowing those people who have chosen not to be vaccinated to have access to certain places. So for testing, if you go to the New York State Department of Health website, they will list a number of options. And this is a fairly new one, and it leads you through how to get at-home tests. The only disadvantage of this is they're all still at this point quite expensive. The site did also direct me to local drugstores, and calling today, Walgreens on Chestnut Street is offering free drive-through rapid testing. You do need an appointment, you do need to go to a website, but that is an option. And they did tell me that they have been screening some of the people at the baseball camps. So again, it's a shifting landscape in terms of where you can find these tests, but they are still available locally. WellNow is no longer doing rapid testing, just to know that, partly because they've switched labs. They were sending all their send-outs to Boston. Now they go to Syracuse. So they're getting 24-hour turnarounds on their traditional PCR testing. And they're continuing to do a fair number. They told me today about 30 or so a day. And Rite Aid Chestnut was offering free rapid testing. They're no longer offering free rapid testing, but they are offering free testing for send-out PCR labs that usually take 1 to 3 days. Also, you need to make an appointment on the website for that. And they are selling rapid testing on the shelves. Those are the rapid antigen tests, not quite as accurate, but will, I think, allow people passports into things that require that. So again, just to know, there is testing available. A little bit more about vaccines. I think I said the efforts on behalf of the county to continue vaccinating, because we have a little ways to go. We're not at 70% yet. Other news in terms of vaccines. A week or so ago, Moderna did request FDA authorization for 12 to 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds. So that may provide more availability for adolescents. And Pfizer, as of May 28th, did apply for full approval. They were able to do that because they now have 6 months of data, both safety and efficacy-wise, in order to qualify for that full approval. And the significance of that is that it will hopefully, it may allow, one, people to be more reassured that it's safe as well as effective. And it may also allow for more mandates for vaccination by employers. The chancellor for SUNY has required vaccinations for returning students with the stipulation that there is full FDA approval of a vaccine. So hopefully that will come soon. Both Pfizer and Moderna are doing active trials for children under 12. But my understanding is that probably won't happen in approval-wise until the fall in terms of emergency approval. There is a new vaccine that reported this week, the Novavax vaccine. They haven't applied for FDA emergency use authorization, but they should. It is anticipated they will soon. They did report yesterday that they have completed their phase 3 trials, which also involved about 30,000 people and which did show comparable efficacy and safety to the mRNA vaccines. This vaccine uses a slightly different technology from either the mRNA vaccines, Pfizer and Moderna, or the adenovirus vectored vaccines, which are J&J and AstraZeneca. This is using synthesized or grown in the lab spike proteins. And it's a similar technology that we have known for flu and HPV vaccines. So hopefully people will be reassured about their safety. And as we all know, and Gary will speak to this, I'm sure, we heard today from the governor that pretty much most all restrictions are now lifted. So we're going to be in a new reality. This also happened today for California, a number of other states, but not all states. This sort of specifies it. It's also on the site. And basically it lifts restrictions for most all businesses and all places in public, with the exception of large-scale indoor event venues, and that's over 5,000, schools, public transit, congregate shelters, correctional facilities, nursing homes, and healthcare settings. But the only other thing I would say about this, and I highlighted this, is that this is the state's minimum standards, and that any businesses are free to choose to lift any or all restrictions, or even refer to their archived guidance. Businesses are authorized to require masks and social distancing. So I think as we work our way through this big relief of everything opening, we also need to be mindful of supporting those businesses and organizations that may still elect to require mask use, which they are fully entitled to do as long as they are in compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. And that's all I had prepared. I would be happy to entertain questions. Mark?
Thanks, Dr. Jorgensen, and thank you very much for all your service over the past 16, 17 months. Really been appreciated, and also appreciate these updates. They're quite informative. With regards to variant D, or the Delta variant, do you have any early kind of studies about how that's holding up against, or how the vaccines are holding up against that? Is there any evidence out there to say that that is consistent with other areas? Or are we seeing breakthroughs at a higher rate with that particular variant than the others?
So what I read earlier in the week is that a preliminary study, I think in Britain, where it's more prevalent, showed with the Pfizer vaccine first dose only, there was only about 33% efficacy. But in something I read today, and I think it was a study in Scotland, they were saying that with the second dose, and it may have been the same study they were referencing, that the efficacy was equivalent to, to the standard for the mRNA vaccine. So I think it's a real concern. But again, what I was reading today, at least, was that as far as we know, the vaccines are still going to be somewhat effective for the Delta variant. And the Delta variant, I think it's estimated here in the United States, is still, it's here, but the percentages are quite low, like less than 10%. That being said, I think my understanding is that there are going to be boosters in the works now that they know the genomic sequence of these variants, and the boosters will be hopefully addressing these variants of concern. So does that help?
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Lynn?
You mentioned that at the SUNY site, they switched over from Pfizer to the Johnson & Johnson. Do you think that has an impact on the amount of folks willing to go up there and get the vaccination? So I guess with that said, where would someone want to go that doesn't want the Johnson & Johnson vaccine go and get the Pfizer or Moderna?
That's a really good question. I know the pop-up clinics the county's doing are also Johnson & Johnson. I'm pretty sure, and I wanted to say this as well. Part of this shift away from the big sites is that all of the primary care providers now in the Bassett system are offering vaccines in their offices. And I know for the pediatric population, that is Pfizer. I am not certain about the adult, but my suggestion, if someone wanted to go with Pfizer or Moderna, to maybe look into the primary care offices in the community.
Okay.
If that helps. Are people concerned about the J&J because of the blood clotting issues?
Well, unfortunately, there's been a few different negative reports coming back on the Johnson & Johnson, and I think some folks are staring away from it because of the negativity.
Yeah, well, remember they put it on pause and the CDC reviewed it and they brought it back, but they are, I mean, with that, there is a warning about this very rare, less than 0.01%, but still a significant complication of these weird thromboses.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think people hearing that may be fearful. The CDC still felt strongly that the risk was so low, it was still going to be approved without reservation. Some countries in Europe chose to have it ongoing only for older people because it was younger people in whom they saw this complication.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think people, if they're hesitant and they feel better getting one over the other, then that's hopefully they'll have access to choose. I mean, that's the beauty of being here, that we now have a choice. I think we just shipped out a ton of J&J to Mexico. Did you guys see that in the news?
That, and wasn't it EU refused or banned? Didn't they refuse a Johnson & Johnson? So I, like I said, there's been some different reports going around
There were
about it. So
definite countries in Europe that I think Germany for a while wasn't using it at all because of the concern. And, for a while I was reading a lot about that and I haven't heard much about it lately, if they've seen more of that specific complication. The CDC is actually now reviewing 200 and some cases of weird heart inflammation that is actually related to the mRNA vaccines in young people, primarily young men. So again, over 300 million of these vaccines, they're seeing a few hundred of these complications. I think they're taking them seriously. I think they're reviewing them and giving out appropriate notice and guidance around them. But I can see why people are hesitant. And I think that, again, having choice, which I think we still may have in this community around which vaccine we're getting, is probably a really good thing.
yeah, that's great that we still have a choice. So thank you very much for that report.
Yep.
If there's no further questions, as we are moving forward at the time, we are opening up and are restricted. We have a lot of people to thank, but nobody more than Dr. Diane Jorgensen. And this, as we are moving out of the need for these reports, this will be Dr. Jorgensen's last scheduled report. She'll be available to us, of course, if we need her and for consultation. But I just want to take a minute to thank Diane. I mean, she has helped guide us through the last, 15, 16 months. And she's just been terrific. She has worked hard. She's been there for us. She's embedded herself into the city structure. And we've all depended upon her greatly, and particularly in the early days, last spring, when we were truly in uncharted territory. Diane was a valuable person for us to rely upon for guidance. And I particularly appreciated Diane, because when I would catch help from people, because I would announce restrictions, I would just say, hey, it's the doctor's orders. So, I just think we owe Diane a giant thank you and our gratitude for all she's done for us over this past year plus. And I know I've told the story many times, but for those who are listening who may not have heard it, it's worth telling again. I called Diane up in December of 2019, asked if she would consider being our what a tale. Well, once a year, probably to get your advice because somebody is raising pigeons in the backyard. And she said, okay, I can handle that. Well, who knew? But it was probably the best decision I've made in the last 2 years. So just a big thank you, Diane. And I think we can all take ourselves off mute to give her a hand.
Thank you so much, everybody. I will miss you. But you know where to find me.
We will find you.
Oh, and you're also welcome to attend anytime. You don't have to have an invitation.
Thank you.
And, I mentioned there are a lot of people to thank. We're now at a point that we dreamed of being for the last 15 months, restrictions being lifted, getting back to normal. Yesterday was the first day of reopening City Hall. And I tell you, it was great to see people of the public coming in to avail themselves of access to city business. And you got to see them smiling because they didn't have to wear masks. It was terrific. I think it was for all of us here. It was a great thing to see and to feel a step forward. But I also just want to say it's a time for us to look back and say thank you to so many people. And of course, I'll leave out tons of people. But first of all, the people of the city who have done just such a great job over the last 15 months. And sacrificing when they needed to sacrifice, and paying attention and adopting all of the restrictions without a whole lot of complaints. People were great. People have a sense of community, and people look out for each other. And honestly, the people of the different sectors of this community, and we usually will fight over turf wars and this and that and disagree over things. There was none of that this past year. People just came together and said, we're all in this together. How can I help? And it was a remarkable, wonderful thing to do. Everybody who was responsible for getting the vaccination site up here, but particularly SUNY Oneonta for their willingness to host it, for Bassett Hospital for staffing it, and to our National Guard, the young people of the National Guard who lived here in Oneonta, for weeks, if not months at a time, to help staff that. Colleges who had very successful spring semesters, which we were concerned about. They both did excellent jobs, and they were also great in terms of communicating with the people of the city. And of course, all of our healthcare workers and all of our essential workers, and there's just so many people to thank. It's greatly appreciated. So all good stuff. Today's a good day, and we're looking forward to having a summer that is pretty close to normal. And the first big event will be this Saturday of our first Saturday street closing, where we will have outdoor dining, shopping, entertainment, and a lot of smiling people. And also a reminder that it is also Juneteenth, and in the park all afternoon from 3 o'clock through the early evening. There will be a celebration of African-American culture and how much it contributes to our country and even our own little community here. So if you get a chance, stop by as well. And that's all I've got. I have to wake up my computer screen because if I talk too long, it goes to sleep. And we're going to go to the consent agenda. Motion 1, motion that the council approves the minutes of the regular meeting, which was held on June 1, 2021. Motion 2, motion that the council approves the warrants, which total $623,291.45. And that the same be placed on the Director of Finance's desk for payment as presented. Motion 3. Motion that the council approves the purchasing agent's recommendation to award the unit price bid for the 2021 transit mixed concrete to the responsive qualified bidder, which was Otsego Ready Mix of Oneonta, New York. 4, motion of the council authorizes the mayor to enter into a supplemental contract with CT Mail Associates of Latham, New York, for additional services for continuing the full-time construction administration, observation, and engineering services that have been associated with the city's Wilbur Lake Dam Repair and Improvement Project. This comes at a cost of $69,950, is of course subject to review by the city attorney, and that the council further authorizes a budget transfer from the capital projects construction budget to the engineering budget for said amount. 5, motion that the council authorizes the mayor to enter into a contract with Mission on Main for the production of the 2021 Saturday street closures, which will run from June 19th through September 4th in the amount of $7,000. This is, of course, subject to review by the city attorney and also approves budget amendments and transfers for said amount, with the excess funds coming from the 2020 program of $1,661 and the balance of $5,339 coming from the general fund contingency. 6, motion that the council approves the street closure permit application. And this application is made by Mission on Main for the 2021 Saturday street closures, which will run concurrent Saturdays, June 19th through September 4th. 7, excuse me, motion that the council declares the items for the attached list as surplus and authorizes the purchasing agent to dispose of same. Any items of value will be listed for sale on the auction website, publicsurplus.com. 8, motion to approve budget transfers and amendments totaling $16,262 as presented in the attached report. 9, motion that the council authorizes the mayor to execute the settlement and release agreement with employee 028142, subject to review by the city's labor council. 10, motion that the council authorizes the mayor to execute a memorandum of agreement between the city and the Oneonta Professional Firefighters, Local 2408 IAFF, to settle a potential grievance pertaining to alleged violations of Collective Bargaining Agreement Article 9, Section 5B. 11, motion that the council appoints Daniel Peterson to the position of police officer. This would be effective on a date to be determined after July 1, 2021. This would be at a base salary of $64,000 and is subject to satisfaction of all applicable civil service requirements and background screening checks. That concludes the consent agenda. Do I have any requests to remove any of those motions from the consent agenda? I see none, so I'll entertain a motion to approve. Councilmember Lepari Shu, second by Councilmember Rafter. I think that was your hand up. John, was your hand up? Okay. And Carrie, would you call the vote?
Councilmember Murphy,
Aye.
Councilmember Davies,
Yes.
Councilmember Risberger,
Aye.
Councilmember Lepari Shu,
Aye.
Councilmember Carson,
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington,
Yes.
Councilmember Rafter,
yes,
Councilmember Drenick.
Aye.
Motion, the consent agenda passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we now have 3 additional motions. I'll take them one at a time. The first is a bond resolution, which would authorize the issuance of $2.2 million of serial bonds to pay for the cost of the reconstruction of West Street. Whereas all conditions precedent to the financing of the capital project hereinafter described, including compliance with the provisions of seeker, have been performed, now therefore be it resolved by the affirmative vote of not less than 2/3 of the total voting strength of the council of the city of Oneonta, of Otsego County, New York, as follows. Section 1. The reconstruction of West Street, including replacement of water and sewer lines, sidewalks, curbs, gutters, drainage, landscaping, and other improvements in connection therewith, at a maximum estimated cost of $2.2 million, being a specific object or purpose having a period of probable usefulness of at least 15 years pursuant to subdivision 91 of paragraph A of section 11 of the local finance law is hereby authorized. Section 2, the plan for financing of such object or purpose is by issuance of $2.2 million in bonds of said city, hereby authorized to be issued, therefore pursuant to the provisions of the local finance law, provided, however, that the amount of the bonds to be issued shall be reduced to the extent of grants received in connection therewith. 3, the faith and credit of said city of Oneonta are hereby irrevocably pledged for the payment of the principal of and interest on such obligations as the same respectively become due and payable. An annual appropriation shall be made in each year sufficient to pay the principal of and interest on such obligations becoming due and payable in such year. To the extent not paid from other sources, there shall annually be levied on all the taxable real property of said city a tax sufficient to pay the principal of and interest on such obligations, as the same become due and payable. 4, the powers and duties of advertising such bonds for sale, conducting the sale, and awarding the bonds are hereby delegated to the Director of Finance, who shall advertise such bonds for sale, conduct the sale, and award the bonds in such manner as the Director of Finance shall deem best for the interests of the city. 5, the power to issue and sell bond anticipation notes, including renewals of such notes, is hereby delegated to the Director of Finance. Such notes shall be of such terms, form, and contents as may be prescribed by said Director of Finance, consistent with the provisions of the local finance law. 6, all other matters, except as provided herein relating to such bonds, including determining whether to issue such bonds, have substantially level or declining debt service, and all matters related thereto, prescribing whether manual or facsimile signatures shall appear on said bonds, prescribing the method for the recording of ownership of said bonds, appointing the fiscal agent or agents for said bonds, providing for the printing and delivery of said bonds, and if said bonds are to be executed in the name of the city by the facsimile signature of the Director of Finance, providing for the manual countersignature of a fiscal agent or of a designated official of the city. The date, denominations, maturities, and interest payments, payment dates, place or places of payment, and also including the consolidation with other issues, all shall be determined by the Director of Finance. 7, the validity of such bonds and bond anticipation notes may be contested only if 1, such obligations are authorized for an object or purpose for which said city is not authorized to spend money. 2, The provisions of law which should be complied with at the date of publication of this resolution are not substantially complied with. And an action, suit, or proceeding contesting such validity is commenced within 20 days after the date of such publication. Or 3, such obligations are authorized in violation of the provisions of the Constitution. 8, this resolution shall constitute a statement of official intent for purposes of Treasury Regulations, Section 1.150-2. Other than is specified in this resolution, no monies are or are reasonably expected to be reserved, allocated on a long-term basis, or otherwise set aside with respect to the permanent funding of the object or purpose described herein. And 9, this resolution takes effect immediately, shall be published in summary form in the official newspaper, together with a notice of the city clerk and substantially the form provided in section 81.00 of the local finance law. And before I ask for someone to move the motion, Ginny, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, thank you, Mayor. You did an excellent job.
All I did was read.
No, it's the standard language for bond resolutions, and this will fund the West Street project. And as I reported to the Finance Committee, the New York State had awarded us $740,000 for turning aid, and we're hoping to be able to reduce the general fund portion by at least that amount, if not quite that amount, for this particular purpose, which greatly benefits the city of Oneonta taxpayers.
Now I'll entertain a motion to approve. Councilmember Davies, second by Councilmember Risberger. Discussion? Carrie, would you please call the vote?
Councilmember Murphy,
Aye.
Councilmember Davies,
Yes.
Councilmember Risberger,
Yes.
Councilmember Lepari-Shu,
Aye.
Councilmember Carson,
Aye.
Councilmember Harrington,
Yes.
Councilmember Rafter,
yes,
Councilmember Drenick.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll go to motion 13. Motion that, consistent with the recommendation of the city engineer and the purchasing agent, that the city reject all submissions in response to the city's advertisement for requests for qualifications for professional architecture, planning, and engineering services for the master plan and related services for the Transit Hub Market Street redevelopment. The bids will be rejected due to the changes made by the city in the planned scope of services needed for the project. Do I have a motion? Do I have a motion to approve this? Councilmember Carson, second by Councilmember Rafter. Discussion. Councilmember Lepari-Shu.
Yeah, I would love, I guess, just more information on this. I'm not sure if or where I missed it, but this is something obviously that I feel very strongly about, and so it just as much information as possible would be great.
Okay, Greg, I'm going to call upon you to answer that question.
Sure. Thanks, Mayor. So essentially, we put out that RFQ with the intent of attracting a team that would help develop an RFP for developers that will attract private development to the city of Oneonta, downtown specifically, possibly a public-private partnership, something like that. After we received the responses, we received 2 responses. We reviewed them and just didn't see the team fully coming together the way we thought it might. And we realized we needed to make some changes to the scope. So really, ultimately, we didn't find either of the submissions to be fully realizing the intent of the RFQ, and decided we needed to go another direction, which would be the next motion that we'll be considering.
Gotcha. Can you speak to what those changes will be at this time?
Sure. So part of, probably the key, in my opinion, at least, and others that look at this can feel free to jump in, but the key is having someone that has development experience in Oneonta and intimately knows Oneonta and has established relationships with developers, not only in the Oneonta area, but elsewhere. And that was something that we really saw that was missing from the other proposals. I think it's something that really that's the whole key, is trying to attract developers. So if you don't have someone that already has that relationship, then it's going to be difficult to accomplish, what we're aiming for. We already have a conceptual plan that is a good one for the public projects that were funded by the DRI, the transit hub, parking garage improvements. That's still a viable project on its own, and that's something that we could go forward with if through the end of this process, basically by the end of this year, we find that there is no development potential in Oneonta, or there isn't right now, or we can't attract any private development. We will still have a viable public project to go forward with. But I think the whole intent of the DRI to revitalize the downtown, this is our shot to try to maximize that potential and try to use that public money the state provided us to spur more private development. So I think ultimately that's the biggest thing for me.
Gotcha. And can you,
Greg, I'll just add to that, Greg, that I think that it was also found that the original RFP may have focused too much on creating a vision, and we felt, and neither one of the proposals we received were strong in that area, and we felt that the scope of work should be more focused on recruitment of developers with less emphasis on creating a vision. So the scope has changed in that way.
okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Can I ask, Greg, why, in your opinion, it's important to work with a firm that is, I'm not exactly sure how you put it, but my cats are fighting, that has a good, I don't know how loud that is. It's very loud here. But that has ties to Oneonta and intimately knows Oneonta.
I think part of the benefit of that is knowing the players, knowing the property owners, knowing how the city operates and what the city's looking for, being familiar with the city's comprehensive plan and all the discussions that have happened over the years in the development of the DRI projects, to have a better understanding of ultimately where we're trying to go. Because this firm or this team will be helping us describe to developers as well as property owners what the city is looking for, what we hope to see built down there. And I think the value of putting this developer RFP together is going to show to them what the city wants, what we're willing to accept. And also, by the time we put that RFP out, we'll have a good idea of what developers are interested in spending their money on, what's a viable project. So by getting everyone kind of on the same page, I think it's going to make it more likely that we ultimately find a project that goes forward.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Can I ask, in your estimation, how many, I'm going to keep using the word firms, even if that's not appropriate, would fit that criteria?
I'm not really, oh, go ahead, Gary.
No, I was just going to say that is the reason that in the next motion, the council is going to be asked to waive the purchasing policy procedures because there are so few, and we could only identify one group to work with that has the experience working with the city, is knowledgeable about the city, is knowledgeable about our DRI. And quite honestly, there has to be a level of trust and strong communication, because we do not want anybody attracting developers who have ideas that are contrary to what the council and the community wants. So it's got to be somebody who knows us, has a strong relationship, understands us, understands our history, understands where we're going, and we have a trustful, strong communication with.
Yeah, I understand all that. And I think that was, I think that was kind of my impression of these two motions together. And I think that that's a valid point, although this is I'm starting to see a pattern where we're waiving our procurement policies in favor of Delaware Engineering, and they obviously have done a lot of really great work for the city. I'm not comfortable with always saying, well, this is the firm that knows us. And so we're going to circumvent policies that are in place for a reason. I'm just not comfortable making a habit of that. And I think that we have done it on more than one occasion. And I guess I'm all for the fact that they are local and employ local people. But I just think that we are kind of putting ourselves into one lane and not exploring all our options by doing that. And so I guess that's just my statement on this. Thank you so much for taking the time to explain that to me thoroughly and confirming the things that I had thought. And also, I think, like I said, that your thought process is really spot on, but it's just the process for me that doesn't sit right. So
It's a good question. Valid question.
thanks.
Any other further discussion on this motion? Okay, Carrie, could you please call the vote?
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Davies?
Yes.
Councilmember Risberger?
Aye.
Councilmember Lepari Shu?
Yes.
Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Rafter?
Yes.
Councilmember Drennick?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Now we're going to motion 14. Motion that the council authorizes the mayor to enter into our contract, subject to review by the city attorney, with Delaware Engineering, DPC of Oneonta, New York, for the development of conceptual plans and providing support for the development of a public or private transit hub parking garage development project on Market Street, with costs for the basic services not to exceed $95,000. And if additional services are authorized by the city, the accumulative costs are not to exceed $110,000. And further authorizes a waiver from provisions of the city's purchasing policies and procedures manual relative to professional services, and further authorizes any necessary budget amendments and transfers. Do I have a motion to approve? Councilmember Risberger, second by Councilmember Carson. Discussion. Okay, I'm seeing none. So Carrie, would you please call the vote?
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Davies?
Yes.
Councilmember Risberger?
Aye.
Councilmember Lepari Shu?
No.
Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Rafter?
Yes.
Councilmember Drennick?
Aye.
Our agenda of motions. I'll open it up for any additional business or discussion. Anybody? Okay. Councilmember Carson?
Mayor, it's been a little while since we approved the Housing Commission. Were you looking for names to be brought forth to you?
Here's where it stands. I've been working on both the Housing Commission and the Public Art Commission.
Mhm.
It's been a little slow going intentionally because I want to be very careful on selecting people who not only understand the problems and the challenges, but people who are in a place to provide solutions, and move us forward. So I've received a number of recommendations, but I've been vetting each one carefully and looking and being careful. Here's where we stand right now. I do have on the Housing Commission, I do have 7 names. I'm waiting for a final agreement to serve on, I think, the last one. And actually, the Public Arts Commission is identical. I have seven names, and I'm waiting on one more person to get back to me to say that they agree to serve. I would say that I think we have an excellent bunch for both. My hope is at the next council meeting, I'll be able to present that list for approval. And then we can talk about whether to start them up over the summer or to wait till after vacations are over. We can discuss going on that.
Sounds great. Thank you for getting that done.
So we're getting very close.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Murphy.
Well, apparently it's we. I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that thank publicly members of the Human Rights Commission, particularly Diane Jorgensen Daniels and our chair, Shannon McHugh, for putting together and working really hard to get the second annual Juneteenth celebration into place. It's still a few days away. It'll be Saturday, but I know they've worked very hard, and I think it's going to be a great event, and I can't wait to see it. And I think it's great that our community is celebrating such an important and historic event.
And Luke, while we're talking about the community, the Commission on Community Relations and Human Rights, we have a big event coming up. I think it's July 14th. I think it's a Wednesday night. We are going to celebrate and issue proclamations and congratulate the winners of our annual Trailblazer Award, which honors women in the community who have gone above and beyond in blazing new ground, and accomplishing great things. This year typically we do 2 a year. This year we're going to honor 4 because last year due to COVID, we were not able to. Last year's winners, we have 4 dynamite awardees this year. Last year's winners were Stacey Haynes and Kim Muller. This year's winners are Judge Bernier, Judge Lucy Bernier, and Kathy Lynch from Oneonta High School. It's hard to come up with 4 stronger awardees than that. So it's also going to be at Demaski Field. It's going to take place at 6:30 prior to an Outlaws game. So we'll be able to welcome a lot of people to the ballpark. Please plan on being there if you're able to. We will have we'll have one of the 4th row at the first pitch of the game after the awards ceremony, and it should be a great night. And hopefully we get a lot of people there to celebrate this. So we're looking forward to it.
Gary, what's the date again?
I think it's July 14th. It's a Wednesday.
Okay, thank you.
So should be a great day.
Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, if there's nothing else, correspondence, Carrie, anything?
There is no correspondence.
Okay. I'm not aware of need for executive session. And so with that, thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your night, and we are adjourned.
Thanks all.